20 years ago, a newborn baby, just a few hours old, vanished from the nursery at Doctors Hospital of Laredo, disappearing without a trace and leaving her family completely shattered. Authorities suspected a young woman who had been seen at the hospital earlier, someone who abruptly left Texas right after the night of the incident, but no camera clearly captured her face, and there were too few clues to pursue, causing the investigation to quickly stall. Yet, for all those years, the child's mother never gave up hope, clinging to any slim possibility that her daughter was still somewhere in America. Then one day, as investigators reviewed old VHS tapes and evidence once deemed unrelated, they spotted a detail everyone had overlooked for 2 decades. A detail that changed the entire case in a way no one could have imagined. Before diving into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cold cases like this, don't forget to hit subscribe. One humid May night in 1999, Laredo, Texas sank into the thick silence of the border region, where the wind carried the scent of dry earth and the distant rumble of trucks like the steady breathing of the city at night. Inside Doctors Hospital of Laredo, yellow lights draped the empty hallways like a faint mist, reflecting off the shiny tile floors and stretching into slow bands of light. The maternity ward was so quiet that the monitors in the rooms echoed like a clock ticking in a vast space. Carla Jimenez, just 19 years old, lay dozing after the exhaustion of her first childbirth. A few hours earlier, she had held her little daughter in her arms. Baby Lucia, skin still pink and red, cries soft and weak like a breaking breath. The nurse had taken the baby to the nursery room for monitoring, a routine procedure during the night shift. The night staff said the baby slept peacefully, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, breathing evenly, no crying, no fussing, nothing to draw attention. A nurse passing by the nursery, arms full of files, glanced inside out of habit formed over years on the job. Lucia's crib was still in place, the nightlight glowing softly, the space silent enough to hear the air conditioning shift airflow. That was the last moment anyone saw the baby. No one in the maternity ward knew that minutes later, that peace would be torn apart. Carla woke suddenly, feeling like she'd been yanked from a fitful dream, an unexplained unease rising in her chest. She asked to see her baby. A nurse nodded and headed to the nursery to check. But when she returned, her face confused, eyes avoiding Carla's. She didn't speak right away, as if trying to organize her thoughts or waiting for something from behind. The air in the room grew thick, then hurried footsteps started echoing in the hallway. Doors slammed open, urgent calls back and forth. Just minutes later, the entire maternity ward plunged into unbelievable chaos. Baby Lucia was no longer in the nursery. No explanation, no nurse had taken her, no transfer paperwork, no one remembered seeing anyone carry her away. Carla sat bolt upright, trying to get out of bed, her voice breaking as she asked over and over, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby?" Staff rushed to check every room, every hallway, corner, every storage area. Some ran to the staff break room, others made internal calls. But no matter how many doors they opened, how many times they called the baby's name, the answer was only empty space. In the growing chaos, a night shift worker, hands shaking from stress, had no choice but to pick up the phone. His voice rang out, urgent and choked. "We need help now. A newborn just vanished." And Laredo's quiet night ended in that moment, as the family officially reported to police the incomprehensible disappearance of a child only a few hours old. Laredo PD officers arrived at the hospital faster than anyone expected, red and blue lights sweeping across the front of Doctors Hospital of Laredo, while inside the maternity ward, staff breaths came quick and Carla's cries broke intermittently. 2 officers stepped through the main doors, exchanged quick words with the desk staff, then immediately ordered a full lockdown of all exits. The automatic doors that stayed open all night were temporarily locked, the emergency area chain doors secured in seconds, and the hallway to the parking lot blocked with yellow tape. No one could leave the hospital until police cleared them. Officers fanned out in small groups, entering every area, patient rooms, supply closets, technical zones, laundry, staff bathrooms, even corners no one usually noticed. Every place they passed was noted in notebooks, room numbers, doors, spots that could hide something as small as a blanket or an access card. Short, tense, pressured exchanges linked along the hallways. Check the break room. Go downstairs. Who was the last in the nursery? A normal late-night hospital scene suddenly turned into a maze of suspicion. When one officer checked the bathroom near the nursery room, he noticed the door not fully closed, left ajar, though no one had just used it. In the supply storage area, a box of gauze was open, but no one claimed to have touched it. Those things weren't enough to conclude anything, but enough to add a layer of anxiety. Something was off, but nothing clear enough to grasp. Another officer checked the east emergency stairwell. The heavy door, fitted with a strong auto-close mechanism, was only shut, not latched. It wasn't wide open, but enough to show that minutes earlier, someone could have passed through without leaving obvious signs. He pulled lightly. The door didn't respond normally. No click from the magnetic lock. Could be a technical glitch. Could be someone opened it and left it that way. Either reason meant the whole area needed closer checks. On the ground floor, near the night kitchen and technical room, an officer found an empty cart out of place. Hospital staff confirmed it should be stored neatly behind the supply room, but no one remembered moving it tonight. The handle still had damp marks like it had just been touched. No clear blood or strange substance imprints, but an item usually tightly controlled being misplaced meant they noted it immediately. Officers kept splitting to search the technical floor, air duct areas, large vents, equipment storage, narrow hallways just wide enough for one person. The whole zone suddenly became eerie in a hard-to-explain way. Places no one ever cared about now. Possibilities, however slim, for someone to hide or pass through. But no matter how many doors they opened, vents they shone into, curtains they pulled, dark corners they searched, there was nothing. No cries, no warmth, no familiar baby items, no signs anyone had passed when they checked the floors. Not that someone left something obvious, not that someone was hiding, just nothing. And that emptiness scared everyone more than anything. Another officer hurried into the staff break room, where a locker was cracked open. Inside, messier than usual, a few items fallen like someone had rummaged. But no one could confirm if the locker was locked before, and no one was sure if any staff had entered in the last hours. Police had to log every detail, even if none formed a real clue. Meanwhile, in the maternity ward, the on-duty doctor tried to calm Carla, but no one could ease her panic. Her unconscious calls for her baby echoed into the hallway, where an officer just returned to report they still hadn't found any sign. The baby was in the hospital. Time dragged heavier than ever. The longer they found nothing, the clearer it felt something more sophisticated, discreet, carefully planned was at play. When an officer reported to the shift manager that the whole floor's been checked, no one felt relief. If there was something to find, a trace, a path, an item left, they could hold on to it. But those clean, silent, perfectly intact rooms sparked a different fear. If the baby wasn't in the hospital, where was she? Half an hour after Laredo PD locked down the area, but found nothing, an officer glanced at his partner and said quietly, "If someone got the baby out, they did it fast, and very quiet." No one replied. They just kept going, opening one more door, flipping one more curtain, slim hope that somewhere in Laredo's cold late-night darkness, a tiny detail would reveal the right path. But in that moment, all they had was a hospital perfect to a terrifying degree, and a newborn vanished without a trace. As officers kept sweeping hallways like chasing an invisible ghost, a young janitor appeared at the technical area door, looking unusually confused. He said he'd just seen something out of place in the back hallway corner, where usually only tool carts and internal trash bins sat. No one expected much, nearly an hour of everything leading to voids, but they followed him anyway, shining flashlights into narrow shadows between walls and stainless steel carts lined up tight. At the hidden corner by the backyard door, where the single bulb flickered like it was failing, they saw the pink blanket. It lay right on the cold tile floor, not folded, not placed on anything, just sprawled like it fell while someone moved fast. An officer crouched, not touching yet, just looking. The blanket was familiar, the thin kind every maternity baby got wrapped in, soft pastel fabric any mother would recognize. A few loose threads stuck to the floor like someone dragged it, then let go. In a room full of footsteps, In the stuffy early morning hospital air, the blanket's appearance was like a small sound in the silence. An officer gloved up, picked it up with 2 fingers, carefully turned the inside out, and everyone saw what stopped them. A small red streak half a fingertip size, dried soaked into the fabric, not enough to guess anything, not enough to panic, but enough to slow the group's breathing. For an hour of searching, they had nothing clear. This was the first real item, something belonging to baby Lucia, in a place she couldn't reach herself. The blanket went straight into an evidence bag, and no one spoke for seconds like any word might make what they thought real. An officer immediately called the mobile lab tech to take the sample. While they processed, a female nurse approached, face paling at the blanket. She confirmed it was the exact type used in the nursery that night. Not from another area, not personal. She added what got more attention. I remember when I passed the nursery, the blanket was still around the baby. No way someone carried it out here without me hearing. But that contradicted another nurse's statement minutes earlier. This one said she'd seen a blanket folded on a cart, and it was hard to know whose since the night shift was busy. 2 accounts, one saying the blanket stayed wrapped, one saying it was folded, made the already murky picture cloudier. When police asked them to repeat the last sighting time, both started adjusting details from memory, but the gap between stories couldn't erase. One remembered passing the nursery before Carla woke, the other remembered carrying papers to the supply room when seeing the blanket on the cart. No one lied on purpose, but in a chaotic night, a memory off by minutes could shift the whole case. The lead officer noted 2 conflicting statements about the same item, and everyone knew, in a newborn abduction, that conflict was as dangerous as an open door no one knew since when. As the blanket was taken away, the group resumed sweeping, but different now. No slim hope the baby was nearby, misplaced room or quick check. The blanket out of place meant someone carried her through this hallway. That fact alone made officers move faster. Flashlights scanning floors, under seats, along baseboards, places they'd passed, but then believed they might find the baby intact. An officer stopped at a wall corner, where the floor was still damp from recent mopping. He looked close, called a partner, but not for big evidence, just a hasty wipe spot on the floor, rag marks different from the rest, like someone bent down here seconds, then stood and continued. No blood, no footprints, nothing conclusive, but here any mismatch became a puzzle piece. As they moved toward the hospital back door, where AC hummed a monotonous background, an officer looked around and said softly, "The blanket didn't get here itself, and whoever brought it was very fast." Obvious, but the way it echoed in the dark hallway made silence heavier. They still hadn't found baby Lucia, but now, at least they had the first piece of the chain, a piece enough to suggest a new direction, though faint and lost in the thick hospital darkness of Laredo. With the pink blanket sealed and sent off, officers returned to the hospital security room to review the full camera system from that night, hoping for what empty hallways and clean rooms couldn't provide movement. The small sealed security room was colder than the rest of the hospital, and light from old CRT monitors cast a pale blue moon-like glow on the walls. Hospital cameras in 1999 were all old, low-quality, black and white only. No audio, no resolution to zoom faces, but they were the only way to revisit minutes no one in the hospital remembered clearly. The lead officer pulled the VHS tape from the machine, loaded the night shift recording into the player, and let it run from the start. The screen flickered seconds, then showed the long hallway from nursery to technical, empty, quiet, just pale light on the floor. They fast-forwarded. Nurses passed, a couple walked slowly toward maternity, a worker pushed a tool cart. Everything normal, nothing hinting at an impending disappearance. Then they cued near when Carla woke, image jittered slightly, familiar old VHS sign. At first, no one saw anything. Hallway still just alternating light and shadow, but when an officer slowed it to near frame by frame, they spotted a blur. Not a clear person, just a shape moving fast through the frame, too fuzzy for a face, but enough to know it wasn't uniformed staff. Small build, slightly hunched, like holding something close. The figure appeared less than a second, then vanished at the right edge, stepping out of view like into nothingness. Officer rewound. Slow play. still just a dark streak. The security attendant said quietly, "That hallway has no second camera. Image ends here," meaning anyone going that way vanished from sight. No one knew what followed. A dead-end, rarely used sub-stair, door to old storage. An officer asked if that area was checked tonight. The shift manager nodded, but voice unsure. As they kept forwarding, something else. A video segment glitched. Not full screen, but local, 3 to 4 seconds, distorting like a magnet near the tape. Light streaks warped, people and objects pulled into blurry diagonals. When glitch ended, hallway empty again. No movement, no figure, no sound to help. Just perfect lost control, right when the camera should have captured the key moment. An officer asked hospital security if any prior tech issues were logged. None, never. The system rarely glitched, and issues logged error codes, but in the nearly 2 hours around Lucia's disappearance, no errors, just this glitch, in the hallway linking nursery to the back delivery access. They rewound again. This time, an officer spotted what no one noticed first, right before the glitch. A blur like a hand or object swept the lower frame. Unclear, just quick motion near the ground. Odd because too low for adult movement, but not clear enough to identify. An officer tapped the table lightly, thinking, that blur could be anything. A medical drape corner, coat edge, or dragged item. Any conclusion now useless, but no one denied it made the video more unsettling. Switching to parking lot camera, image worse. Black and white made everything speckled, like static rain. Fast forward minutes, showed faint parked car shapes, and a few staff passing. No unusual vehicle clear, no one running, no suspicious movement. But one strange thing, about a minute after the hallway figure vanished from frame, a small dark patch appeared in the parking camera corner, like the lens partially covered by something. No one knew why, no one knew what, no one knew if related or just machine error, but it timed with the hallway figure, enough to thicken the security room air. An officer stared at the screen, then said slowly, if someone got the baby out, they picked the camera's blind spot. No one answered. They just stood in the pale blue room, watching noisy pixels scroll, each with the same question, was this old tape hiding what they needed? Or just enough to suggest a shapeless shadow, making baby Lucia's disappearance night even harder to explain. When the blurry camera frames yielded nothing clear enough, Laredo PD went back to the most basic step, determining who was in the hospital the night baby Lucia vanished. The initial list included over 3 dozen people, from medical staff, visitors, to a few who passed through the ER for minor accidents. But in each name, each note on entry and exit times, officers started noticing small discrepancies, like cracks in what seemed a solid surface. The first group was hospital staff. All had to restate their positions during the disappearance window. Most described accurately and matched time clocks. Nurses changing shifts, on-duty doctors, janitors, technicians checking AC. However, one case stood out to investigators. An admin worker claimed to be in the office area for nearly an hour, but access logs showed her card swiped near the nursery shortly before Carla woke. When asked, she explained it could be a tech error, or someone borrowed her card, since she always left it on the desk. An answer that sounded harmless, but when police asked her colleagues, no one remembered seeing her in the office as stated. No accusations, but the contradiction was logged in the first suspect file. The second group was visitors. This list was more complex. Many entered and left before dawn. A few stayed with hospitalized relatives. A couple claimed they left maternity around before midnight, but camera showed them exiting the main hallway over an hour later. They didn't know the camera captured them, so when asked why times didn't match, they fumbled, explaining poor memory from being too tired. None looked like the blurry camera figure, but the mismatched statements still required closer scrutiny. Another man who visited his grandma in geriatrics said he'd never gone near the nursery, but the front desk attendant remembered directing him exactly toward maternity because he got lost, finding the elevator. Though later cameras showed no movement near the nursery, the contradiction kept him for further interview. And then there was the strange woman, A morning shift nurse recalled seeing a woman standing quite long in front of the maternity directional sign the previous afternoon. The woman carried no bag, no visitor badge, no clear reason to be there. When asked, the nurse only remembered her small build, low ponytail, thin jacket despite humid weather. The woman left as soon as staff approached. No one logged her info, and the previous afternoon's camera was overwritten before the disappearance. So no frames of her, only one person's account, no confirming evidence. But in a newborn abduction context, anyone lingering near maternity the day before without reason went on the review list. Beyond the three main groups, one piece stood out: a worker who reported a lost access card 2 weeks prior. He said he dropped it in the parking lot and couldn't find it, so got a new one. Records confirmed, but police still asked who ended up with the old card, and could it relate to some doors opening easier tonight. These suspicions weren't enough to conclude anything, but enough for police to rescan all hospital movement data, because a lost card in wrong hands could be the key to an unsupervised path. When they re-interviewed some patients in the hallway opposite the nursery, things got messier. One postpartum woman said she heard quick footsteps in the hallway around midnight, but couldn't recall if before or after Carla woke. A man said he saw a shadow pushing a small cart around the hallway corner, but unsure if staff or medical cart. Another patient insisted the hallway was completely quiet with no one passing. 3 statements, 3 different images, none matching, making police unable to piece a clear timeline. All were suspected, but no one truly fit what they sought. Each story like a mirror shard, reflecting the same night in 3 different shapes, and no one knew which was real. As sky lightened outside the glass and first sunlight flickered on the cold hospital floor, police realized they faced a harder puzzle than thought. Baby Lucia vanished in a place where it seemed impossible, and those present that night, innocent or hiding, were all telling fragments of a picture no one had seen whole. As the sun began rising over the eastern horizon, and Laredo's sky shifted to the pale fading orange of early morning, police knew it was time to expand the search beyond the sealed hallways of Doctors' Hospital of Laredo. They split into 3 groups, one toward the rear trash area, one to the storage zone, and the last to the parking lot, where if someone took baby Lucia out, they could only pass in the few short minutes before lockdown activated. The trash area was tucked behind the technical rooms, where morning light couldn't reach, and the tile floors still damp from night shift cleaning. Large gray bins lined up like rough concrete blocks, emitting a mix of waste gauze, disinfectant, and patient food smells. Officers shone flashlights into every gap, every space between bins. No other blanket, nothing baby-like, no sign anyone lingered more than seconds. But when one officer knelt to check the floor near the emergency exit by the trash area, he saw a faint mud mark, small and shapeless, but enough to call partners over. The mud didn't match night staff shoe patterns. Medical shoes left very distinct treads, but was longer and narrower, like someone in smooth-soled shoes, stepping fast and twisting slightly. The mark pointed to a narrow path to the hospital backyard, with only large AC units and high fencing. Nothing certain it directly related to the disappearance, but it was the first detail outside the indoor areas. The second group went to storage, where the hospital kept carts, containers, and night shift miscellany. Some carts misplaced, but staff couldn't recall their original spots from shift start. A few metal cabinets ajar, like someone hastily rummaged. Still, like other areas, clear traces absent. Police could only note small details like a side door not fully shut, a long streak on the tile like something dragged, and a few fabric threads not staff uniform type. Nothing solid to seize as evidence, but not dismissible as harmless. The third group in the parking lot faced more challenges. Lot cameras only captured black and white, noisy, low resolution. Reviewing from security, one vehicle appeared in the lot minutes after the hallway camera glitch. It parked in a shadowed corner near low trees, no lights on for a long while. No one seen entering or exiting, no figures moving around, but the car was there when the hallway camera caught the nursery corridor figure. When police reached the spot, the lot silent with rows of patient and staff cars still overnight. Under thin morning dew, the taped vehicle's position was recognizable, A slight depression, concrete with faint rectangular marks, like a car left hours ago. No plates dropped, nothing on the ground, no water bottle, tissue, candy wrapper, nothing to analyze. Just the empty space of a car that appeared on camera and vanished before sunrise, leaving cleaner concrete than surroundings, suggesting it left right after lockdown. A night guard said he glimpsed low headlights through trees, but thought nothing since he didn't yet know about Lucia. Such statements, late, vague, unsure timing, made everything harder to pin. Police rescanned the entire lot once more, walking rows peering into shadows between cars. No cries, no signs of an abandoned newborn, no dropped cloth, but that emptiness heightened the sense that if the baby left, the taker never hesitated. One officer stood in the lot middle, looking toward the north gate, straight to the main road linking to Mexico border routes, and didn't voice the thought running through his head. But he knew, if the camera car was involved, it left fast, and tracing it would be harder than imagined. The search groups regrouped in the main lobby, reporting details: small mud mark, ajar door, off-position vehicle spot, items no one claimed using, and the car that appeared then vanished on outdoor camera. None strong enough for a clear direction, but together formed a thick gray of mismatches, and in a disappearance, sometimes those faint things start everything. The first hours after expanding the search outside were expected to be a turning point, but when police gathered in the Doctors' Hospital of Laredo main lobby to review all notes, no one felt closer to the truth. All they had was a chain of faint leads, the pink blanket out of place, a mud streak too unclear to analyze, a side door not fully shut, a car that appeared then vanished on camera, and statements mismatched to the point no unified timeline could form. No lead strong enough for an investigation direction, no detail leading to a specific name, and as they started recalling initial suspects for deeper interviews, the long list shrank quickly. Hospital staff, despite some contradictory statements, none had means or reason to vanish from sight in that exact short window. Night visitors, after cross-checking statements and area cameras, mostly cleared as not matching suspicious position or time. The man visiting his grandma had cameras showing him leave ER earlier than he recalled, making his statement confused but nothing indicating nursery proximity. The strange woman from the previous afternoon frustrated investigators more, but asking every staff, no one had enough to identify her. No plate, no saved camera, no visitor sign-in, no clear face description. She simply vanished into the daily hospital traffic. Even the worker who lost an access card gradually cleared. Internal cameras confirmed him only in technical and break areas all shift. Though the lost card created a scary security gap, it didn't match what the main hallway camera captured. Police started feeling like connecting puzzle pieces when half the picture was deliberately hidden. One officer suggested expanding search beyond the hospital, but immediately hit limits. No one outside reported seeing a newborn or someone carrying a baby through public exits. No one recalled a suspicious car leaving the lot at dawn, and outdoor cameras too noisy for plate or driver shape. Even the small mud mark near the emergency exit, what in other cases could start a lead, became meaningless with so much hospital traffic, and that area often had mud from technical carts. The lab took the pink blanket, but trying to extract DNA from the tiny red stain on the edge, 1999 tech couldn't separate. Test results returned one line: insufficient sample for identification. A cold answer slamming shut the only hope police thought could open a direction. Plus, they couldn't know if the red was the baby's blood, someone's in the hospital, or an accidental shift spill. No conclusion, no progress. The Laredo PD Special Investigation Room worked through the night, remapping maternity, identifying paths out of the building without camera capture. But every route led to dead ends, too visible, too trafficked, or no signs anyone passed with a newborn. Helplessness spread through officer groups like a persistent thin fog, unclear but covering everything. A young investigator, after rescanning the shift log 3 times, looked at the ceiling and softly said, maybe this case wasn't like typical disappearances. If someone took baby Lucia out, they knew every nook, every camera, every door, but thinking that only heavied the air, because if true, They faced someone very patient and very determined. By the first day's end, police had to admit a harsh truth. After all they'd done, no specific investigation direction, no perpetrator, no direct suspect, no viable trace. Baby Lucia evaporated in an absurdly short time. Internal report noted simply, concisely but full of helplessness, case no progress. Continue scanning. And in Laredo's weary hospital atmosphere, the silent fear that this disappearance might never be solved started creeping into the thoughts of those present that night, though no one dared say it aloud. In the following days, Laredo PD's Special Investigation Room stayed glued to the hospital, knocking on every room, recalling every staff to repeat statements, scanning surrounding roads, but each loop yielded the same half answers, and weary faces hiding fear they were drifting further from finding baby Lucia. They checked bus depots, truck stops along Interstate 35, reports of abandoned children, all became scattered info, unconnectable to any direction. One officer suggested reporting to border hospitals, hoping someone saw a newborn admitted without records, but results mirrored every effort. No info, no records, no one understanding why a hours-old baby could vanish without traceable signs. 3 weeks after the disappearance, as initial hospital buzz died down, an internal meeting was held at Laredo PD. The lead investigation officer said in an exhausted voice they needed a new element, something strong enough to restart the whole case. But with nothing like that, the file had to shift to pending processing only on new leads. In other words, the case hit the first boundary of cold case status, though no one wanted to admit. A few evidence items retained: the pink blanket with tiny red stain unextractable for DNA, thin fabric threads in storage, faint mud near emergency exit, a photo of the floor with odd wipe streak. But lacking info to prove relevance, they were deemed no investigative value, bagged in special files, carefully sealed, then moved to the city's unsolved case storage, where air thick with old paper and dust, and unfinished cases lay waiting for time to answer. A few officers still searched outside Texas, based on suspicion the camera car, if involved, meant the taker crossed the border or took I-35 north. They sent case descriptions to Border Patrol, Child Protection in San Antonio, Houston, even New Mexico. But every response mirrored: no matching baby, no undocumented child intake, no signal match. All that sank the case deeper into thick, heavy fog of stalemate. Time passed. Those on that night shift changed shifts, jobs, even cities. The strange woman from the afternoon before nearly erased from traces. No camera, no papers, no one knowing where she fit in daily hospital visitors. The geriatrics visitor that night, also cleared of suspicion when camera showed him leave earlier than remembered, simply lost in memory chaos. Even the tech's lost access card, once a scary security hole, downplayed with no further related traces. And then in the 8th month, the file officially closed. Not solved, not ended, just moved to a thick folder, coded, placed on the pending shelf in storage, awaiting a new chance. Some officers remained haunted by mismatched details: blanket out of place, strange floor wipe, unclear mud mark, and especially the camera glitch right when needed most. But all noted under unverified, a temporary label for what they couldn't conclude. No one knew that years later, those very evidence items suspected then dismissed would become key pieces to revive the case from darkness. But in 1999, in that cold, silent storage room, they were just small silent objects, along with a painful truth: baby Lucia's disappearance officially became a cold case. No deadline, no leads, and no one knowing when or if ever the answer would appear. 11 years after the night baby Lucia vanished, Laredo PD's case storage had changed much. Old file boxes shifted to digital storage, and bulky 90s VHS tapes gathered for digitization per Texas State Police directive. Among dozens of nameless tapes and cardboard boxes, the recording from May 14, 1999, at Doctors Hospital of Laredo, lay there: thin dust layer, faded label. A young technician, who wasn't in the force when the case happened, pulled the tape from the box, placed it under light, noted the code for processing. To him, Just another old VHS like the rest. He loaded it into the digitizer, machine lightly humming. Mechanical whir filling the small room with a sound unheard for years. Digital timeline ran slow, black and white frames appeared, and the familiar noisy 1999 hospital hallway camera images revived after over a decade. The technician had no idea that box once held Laredo's most mysterious disappearance. To him, just data scanning, noise removal, brightness balancing, saving as MP4 for system entry. But then, amid the steady machine clicks and flickering tool screen light, he froze. A fleeting moment in the tape, what in 1999 investigators watched dozens of times but found nothing, suddenly strange when clarified in digital format. In the hallway segment from nursery to technical, where only one lone high-angle camera filmed, previous frames showed only empty hallway or a fast blurry shadow. But when the system auto-boosted contrast, smooth noise, balanced dark areas, a new detail emerged at the right screen edge, a reflection streak. Not normal light, not lamp glare, not white burn from noise. Like light bouncing off metal, a small curved surface reflecting a faint face shape of someone stepping quickly out of camera view. The technician leaned back, rewound seconds before the reflection. Slow play. This time, clearer, a metal edge, maybe stainless cart rim, or similar, reflecting the lower face of the passerby. Not the whole face, just chin and left cheek, but on it something 1999 analog cameras couldn't capture clearly. A line running from below the cheekbone up near the temple, a thin, long, faint but visible scar in the digitized version. A scar. The technician rewound again, this time boosting contrast 2 levels. The scar still there, not noise, not object shadow, but a facial feature, something anyone in the hospital that night would surely remember. He flagged the segment red, exported the file, sent immediately to storage chief. When the video reopened in a small meeting room, 3 veteran officers, who worked the 1999 case, silently watched the screen. In the room with only faint projector hum, they slowed that frame to pixels barely moving. Not because sure it was important, but after 11 years of nothing, any unusual detail deserved close check. The scar clearer on the 4th rewind. Not sharp, but distinctive shape, thin, slightly curved, diagonal across left cheek. 2 officers exchanged looks. One softly said, "I don't think we ever saw this detail before." The other nodded, eyes fixed on screen. In 1999, noisy tape, dark, low resolution, no digitization, but now, with brightened image and noise separation, a facial feature they couldn't see then, became a new lead. But the lead to whom? No one remembered a hospital staff with such a scar, no one a visitor with similar face mark, no one recalled seeing someone with metal in that hallway corner. When they pulled the list of night shift workers, hospital visitors that day, statements given and cleared suspects, no name marked facial scar, not one. This made the scar more puzzling. Either the person wasn't on the official list, or someone passed the hospital hallway that night, leaving no entry-exit trace. One officer sighed, leaned back in chair. "We don't know who this is," he said, "but at least we know someone was there." The scar didn't answer the question. It just posed another one no one thought still existed to discover from the old tape after 11 years. But now, from just a small reflection, baby Lucia's case was no longer resting on the file shelf. Something in this digital tape, and it started pulling the case back into the light, even if just a faint glimmer. The discovery of the scar in the digitized tape did not immediately open a new investigative direction, but it caused the baby Lucia disappearance file to be placed back on the Laredo Police Department's desk after nearly 2 decades lying dormant on the shelf. By 2019, the city had established a dedicated cold case unit with federal funding support, and on the priority list, the name Lucia Jimenez, infant abduction, May 1999, was marked orange, a color reserved for cases likely to benefit from new technology. Detective Serena Vega, newly transferred to the unit after years in San Antonio, received the file on a scorching afternoon, when sunlight streamed through the office window, making long-ignored dust particles dance in the air. Serena wasn't easily swayed by old cases, but when she opened the box and saw the yellowed reports, outdated hospital diagrams, and especially the photo of the pink blanket with a red stain the size of a fingertip, she felt a thick silence, as if the case were still breathing somewhere between the pages. She spent weeks rereading every statement, reviewing the digitized 1999 VHS tape, noting every anomaly. What troubled her most wasn't the hallway figure or the strange car in the parking lot, but that every piece of evidence from back then had been labeled insufficient value. She understood that 20 years ago, no one had the tools to do more, but 2019 was different. Serena sent an official request to the Texas DPS Crime Lab, asking to re-examine all stored evidence: the pink blanket, fabric scraps from storage, floor dust from the odd white mark, and even tiny items no one in 1999 thought to preserve. But to access all samples, she needed a court order, because this case involved a newborn abducted from a hospital, a sensitive context. The court required an internal hearing. Serena presented 1999 DNA tech could only handle large samples with clear profiles. Tiny, mixed, multi-source samples, like the red stain on the blanket, were practically useless then. Today, fragmented DNA analysis, trace signal enhancement, and multi-layer mixture separation could analyze samples from just a fraction of a cell, something impossible 20 years earlier. The judge approved the order within a week, adding, "If new technology can yield more information, the court grants the investigation unit access." When Serena placed the evidence box on the Texas State Lab table, a technician in blue nitrile gloves opened each sealed bag, each small item, making everything feel alive again in that cold room. The pink blanket, tiny fabric threads, samples from the emergency exit edge, and minuscule bits from the misplaced cart that night. They started with the blanket. The tiny red stain was cut out with a surgical blade, placed in a centrifuge tube. Next-gen DNA extraction filtered ultra-small molecules, separating human DNA from residual compounds in ways 1999 could never achieve. First day, no expectations. Second day, very weak DNA signals. By the fourth day, they began separating layers. By the end of the second week, a preliminary report went to Serena: DNA profile #1, incomplete but viable. An incomplete profile, but most importantly, usable. Serena read to the end, and stopped at another line. DNA profile #2, mixed source partial separation successful. 2 profiles, not 1, 2, meaning the red stain on the blanket wasn't from a single person. 1999 technology had completely missed this. Laredo PD had been stuck because they believed the stain was insufficient sample and inseparable, but in 2019, the Texas DPS lab had separated 2 distinct DNA samples, though both incomplete. One was fairly small but analyzable. The other more mixed, seemingly transferred to the blanket when someone touched it while moving fast. Serena stood in the lab, as the technician explained, feeling like the case, dusted over for nearly 2 decades, just let out a small sound, not loud enough to call a breakthrough, but enough to say the case wasn't dead. The lab continued analyzing for weeks, trying to reconstruct clearer profiles, searching for repeating base sequences. Serena reorganized the file, adding new tags to each item, creating a classification chart to track each DNA sample's origin. One afternoon, as sunlight poured gold through the cold case unit window, Serena looked at the 2 incomplete DNA profiles, printed on paper, and realized what no one had known for 20 years. At least 2 DNA sources were on the blanket. An item that night should only have had baby Lucia's DNA. Those 2 sources revealed no identities, but confirmed something more important. That night, more than one person touched the blanket, and that for a seasoned investigator like Serena, was never a small detail. The baby Lucia Jimenez case, after 2 decades lying silent in the dark, had just been revived, slowly, faintly, but clearly, and for the first time in many years, it had something like a heartbeat again. The successful separation of 2 DNA profiles from the pink blanket kept Serena Vega in her office for days, reviewing old files while consulting Texas DPS technicians to understand each sample's potential. One of the profiles, the more stable one, was eligible for submission to a genealogical DNA analysis system, where commercial genetic databases and family trees could be used under court order to find distant relatives. Serena knew this wasn't fast. Sometimes one sample led to hundreds in the same ancestral branch, and narrowing could take months, but the case had slept for 2 decades. A few more months was nothing. One October morning, Serena got a call from Clarissa Mendez, the genealogist collaborating with the Texas State Investigation Agency, her voice calm and deliberate, every word measured. Clarissa said initial results were in. DNA sample #1, the least mixed, had found several distant relative matches, ranging from second cousin once removed to third cousin, meaning the DNA matched at a genetic distance of shared ancestors, 3 to 5 generations back. None of the matches lived in Texas, not one. Serena sat up straight as Clarissa listed locations: Phoenix, Santa Fe, Las Cruces, Albuquerque, all in the west and southwest U.S., concentrated most in one spot, New Mexico. Clarissa emailed the genetic linkage map, and when Serena opened it, a network diagram appeared. Small circles for individuals with distant DNA ties, connected by thin lines. All lines eventually converged on one main branch, darker, labeled Ortega lineage. Serena narrowed her eyes at the name, Ortega, a common surname, nothing special, but when she cross-checked the 1999 hospital presence list, direct and indirect contacts, former staff, that day's visitors, no Ortega appeared. Not one Ortega in the original file. That made Serena pay closer attention. If the Ortega lineage wasn't in the list, why was there a genetic link to DNA on the blanket the night baby Lucia vanished? Clarissa explained genealogical DNA doesn't answer who, only which branch, meaning among hundreds of Ortegas, only one or a few touched the blanket that night. The question who and why. Serena scheduled an in-person meeting with Clarissa at Texas DPS. In the large white-walled room, with a faint ethanol smell, Clarissa opened deeper analysis. The Ortega lineage DNA matched strongly, with a family cluster in southern New Mexico, Las Cruces, Mesilla, and Anthony, mostly long-established, Mexican-American populations, across generations near the border. That branch split into 3 subclusters. The first elderly, mostly deceased. The second middle-aged, scattered across New Mexico and Arizona. The third smallest but most notable, people born late 1970s to early 1990s, ages that could relate to 1999 events. In this cluster, 3 names stood out: all Ortega, born 1977, 1985, lived in or near Las Cruces. None had official criminal records. None investigated regarding children. None had obvious reason for suspicion based solely on genealogical DNA. But genealogical DNA doesn't lie. The DNA on the blanket, the only item found near where baby Lucia vanished, belonged to that branch. Serena began searching each individual's movement history, driver records, tax filings, old addresses, school records, early jobs. She wanted to know if any had ever set foot in Texas around 1999. The first lead appeared late that afternoon. One distant Ortega relative, not a suspect, just a cousin, had worked seasonally in Laredo in 1998. He left Texas over 6 months before the disappearance, unrelated directly, but it caught Serena's attention. The Ortega lineage had been in Laredo. If one had lived here, could others have visited without clear records? Serena contacted Laredo Civil Archives, requesting scans of 1998, 2000 rental, motel, and temporary residency records for anyone named Ortega. 3 days later, the reply made Serena lean back in her chair. Yes, one name appeared in an old motel rental list near Market Street. Marisol O., short-term rental for a few weeks in spring 1999. No full surname, no modern ID, just a faded copy of an old ID, and a declared address in Las Cruces, New Mexico. But this name never appeared in any 1999 statements. No staff remembered her, no camera captured her, No one knew she existed throughout 20 years of investigation. The report noted, tenant checked out before morning of May 15, 1999. May 15, 1999. One day after baby Lucia vanished, Serena stared at the line. Nothing conclusive, but if the DNA belonged to the Ortega branch, and an Ortega was in Laredo, exactly during the disappearance, this was no longer coincidence. But Serena didn't rush a conclusion. She knew genealogical DNA was just a map. The investigator had to find the right path. So she kept digging through 2019 data, incomplete DNA profiles, genealogical map, and one sharp but small clue. Marisol O was in Laredo when the baby vanished. For the first time in nearly 20 years, the baby Lucia file began moving in a direction no one had touched, toward New Mexico, the Ortega lineage, and a faint name never in any official report, Marisol. It proved nothing, but it opened a door, one no one knew they needed to look for. From a DNA sample the size of a pinhead, the case had entered a completely new phase. When Serena Vega first saw the name Marisol O in the Old Market Street motel rental list, it didn't feel like finding a clear suspect, but like discovering a tiny broken piece in a puzzle, shattered 2 decades ago. That piece didn't fit anywhere yet, but it didn't resemble any piece seen in over 20 years. She requested the rental records, reviewed the faded ID copy Marisol used to register. The ID confirmed she was from Las Cruces, New Mexico, exactly the center of the genealogical DNA branch Clarissa found. But what made Serena pause was the occupation Marisol listed: volunteer, hospital outreach. Written in slanted print, no organization name, no contact, no proof she was trained in any medical field. Serena checked Texas medical licensing archives: no professional license, no nursing training records, no minimum medical certification. Marisol never appeared on any Laredo hospital staff list or official volunteer roster, but claiming volunteer made Serena dig deeper. She pulled 1999 hospital charity events. Some religious groups brought toys for kids. Community organizations held young mother support programs. If Marisol joined a volunteer group, she could have entered maternity, without staff records. Serena called a former volunteer coordinator from Doctors Hospital in the late 90s. The elderly woman didn't remember every face, but when Serena described, small build, low ponytail, from New Mexico, she paused and said, "There was a girl like that who came a few times early 1999. I don't recall the name, but she was with a church group from El Paso." Serena didn't log it as hard evidence, but enough to move Marisol from a vague name to needs further inquiry. Checking 1999 residency trail, Serena saw Marisol checked out of the motel the morning of May 15, 1999. One day after baby Lucia vanished. No long-term billing, no belongings left, no notes from the landlord. She arrived suddenly, and vanished just as suddenly. That made Serena feel she was looking at someone deliberately leaving no footprints. But how did a New Mexico volunteer connect to a blanket with Ortega lineage DNA? Coincidence? Someone just passing through the hospital that day? Or something else? Serena didn't guess. She just noted, Marisol Ortega, present in Laredo May 1999, left immediately after disappearance. Serena searched New Mexico residency records. Ortega wasn't rare, but matching Marisol's birth year, 1981, to the genealogical branch, Clarissa confirmed. She fits genetically, but fitting doesn't mean suspect. A line every genealogist repeats. Two people can share a large branch without direct relation to the case DNA. Yet Marisol being in Laredo, exactly during the disappearance, made Serena unable to treat her as random. Serena contacted New Mexico County offices. Civil records showed Marisol lived at 3 different addresses, none longer than 2 years. Cecilia Las Cruces, then Anthony, an unstable pattern for someone settled. A Las Cruces clerk said Marisol enrolled in a basic medical practicum around 1997, but dropped out midway. Not enough to practice, not enough for hospital access, but enough to blend into medical volunteer groups. Digging deeper, Serena found another detail. Marisol joined a New Mexico teen mother support program with hospital maternity observation internships at age 17. To Serena, this made Marisol both more suspicious and the file more complex. If she had superficial hospital experience, she could enter maternity unnoticed, but it still proved nothing. Then another detail, tiny, taking Serena nearly 2 weeks to uncover. An El Paso church group sent a 1999 volunteer participant list to Laredo Hospital, and in it, Marisol O appeared once with a note, "May not attend full day." That innocuous note sent a chill down Serena's spine. "May not attend full day" meant she could have been at the hospital, but not present for all activities, meaning she might have been in Laredo the day of the disappearance, but no one in the group noticed where she went, when or if she returned. When Serena visited the old motel, the new owner, who took over in 2005, said pre-2001 rental records were discarded during system upgrades, but he recalled the previous landlord, mentioning a young woman from New Mexico, stayed a few weeks then left in a hurry right before police came asking about the newborn disappearance. Of course second-hand after years, but the timing matched enough for Serena to note. At this point, Marisol Ortega's file began taking a strange shape. From New Mexico, exactly where genealogical DNA pointed. Short-time volunteering in a medical environment, asterisk appeared in Laredo, right near the hospital area. Asterisk left Texas immediately after the disappearance. Asterisk no medical license, no clear employment records. Asterisk no one clearly remembers her face. Serena didn't conclude, but she knew to go further, she had to find where Marisol was now. Because according to New Mexico civil records, after 2001, the name Marisol Ortega vanished from all official entries. No address change, no job application, no new driver's license, no bank activity, as if she chose to live off the paper trail or changed her name. In her late-night office, Serena stared at the data board, where Marisol Ortega stood alone under a big question mark. A person who in 1999 existed only in a few faded lines of an old motel registration, now the first officially questioned after 2 decades of silence. And the baby Lucia case, dormant for 20 years, was now moving toward a name no one expected, Marisol Ortega, the one who appeared from nowhere, vanished into nowhere, and might be the most crucial piece of the entire case. Only Serena didn't yet know that tracing Marisol would lead her on a journey more tangled than the genealogical DNA map, a journey of someone who learned to disappear from the world's sight. After weeks gathering scattered clues about Marisol Ortega, Serena Vega knew she needed something more concrete, a tangible trace, not just a faded motel registration or stories from 2 decades ago. She asked Clarissa, the genealogist, to keep comparing the DNA sample to Ortega sub-branches nationwide, especially those leaving New Mexico after 2000. Clarissa worked tirelessly, through long nights, sifting thousands of public genealogical records, hardly expecting a breakthrough. Then one December morning, as Serena reread the Laredo motel report for the 10th time, Clarissa called with rare excitement, "I have a strange connection." Serena immediately recorded the call. Clarissa explained an incomplete DNA profile in the genealogical system was flagged by an East Coast volunteer DNA analysis group. They were studying a sample from a girl registered as Emily Ortega, born 2000 in North Carolina, in a private adoption file. Serena went silent. Ortega, North Carolina, the flagged incomplete sample, matched about 12% with DNA sample #1 from the blanket, a small but key ratio in genealogical DNA, suggesting distant paternal side relative ties. No final conclusion, but Clarissa was clear. If she's Emily Ortega, and the sample matches that much, the child likely connects to the Ortega branch we're pursuing. Serena immediately requested Emily Ortega's file from North Carolina State Office, and days later, the documents arrived priority mail. Opening it, what caught Serena first wasn't the adoptive parents' names or address, but the large gap between page 1 and 2. The file stated, place of birth unknown facility, North Carolina, 2000. No hospital, no doctor, no standard birth record code. Just a birth registration with the adoptive mother's signature and county seal, no medical records. What chilled Serena second was the note. No medical records from 0-24 months, no vaccinations, no checkup log, no hospital birth report. A child born in America, with no medical records for the first 2 years, was nearly impossible, unless the child wasn't born in a hospital or taken to any facility during that time. Serena set the file down carefully, as if it might break. Emily was adopted in North Carolina in 2000, about a year after baby Lucia vanished in Laredo. It could be coincidence, but coincidences like this rarely appear in cases dragging 2 decades. Serena turned the next page. Mother's information blank. Father's information blank. Only guardian, listed a Winston-Salem couple, who filed for private adoption. The investigation noted, they received Emily through a friend, described as a young Hispanic woman, no clear papers, and they didn't know her full name. Serena's spine went cold reading that line. A young Hispanic woman, no clear papers, no real name given. North Carolina, everything pieced into a familiar but not yet conclusive shape. Serena called Clarissa, asking about Emily's DNA sample fitting the Ortega branch. Clarissa answered slowly, "Can't confirm, but the sample almost certainly belongs to someone distantly related to the New Mexico Ortega branch," meaning Emily wasn't necessarily Marisol's child, but could be one Marisol brought from Texas to the East Coast, if the theory held. Serena contacted Winston-Salem police to verify the 20-year-old adoption file. In the old records office, an elderly clerk found a faded photocopy on yellowed paper, child intake date 08-2000. Person delivering child woman providing no papers, surname Ortega per verbal introduction. Again no papers, no trace, just the name Ortega, like a shadow always behind the files, never fully revealed. Serena's heart pounded. She didn't rush to conclude Emily was Lucia. No proof, no confirming DNA. 2 years of missing medical records could have other reasons. But what kept Serena glued to the file was the last line in a small memo. Child has small scar behind left ear, unknown cause. Serena recalled the 1999 exam, when baby Lucia was born. The doctor noted an identifying mark, a faint birthmark behind the left ear. Not a scar, not an injury, just a pale patch the doctor logged in case identification was needed. A rare, distinctive feature. She sat silent in her office, glancing at the data board where Marisol Ortega sat next to left Texas the 15th of May 1999, and below, a new red pen line. Emily Ortega, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 0-24-month records blank. Serena didn't let herself believe yet, that was dangerous. But for the first time in months, she felt a cold draft through the investigation room door, not fear, but the real sense the case had touched an undercurrent no one knew to look for in 2 decades. Emily Ortega wasn't the answer yet, but her existence, a child appearing with no past, bearing a name echoing the genealogical DNA branch, handed to adoptive parents by an unidentified young Hispanic woman, gave the baby Lucia case a new direction. And that direction, strangely, pulled straight from Laredo, 1999 to Winston-Salem 2000, through the hands of a paperless, recordless woman, with one repeating name, Ortega. After discovering Emily Ortega's strange North Carolina file, Serena Vega knew the next step wasn't just interviewing the adoptive family, but needed undeniable proof. DNA. Without a DNA test, everything she'd found so far was just speculative threads, faint shadows stretching from New Mexico to Laredo, to Winston-Salem. Serena contacted North Carolina Child Services, explaining this was a federal cold case involving a hospital newborn abduction. It took 3 weeks for legal paperwork, 2 more for the North Carolina court to review the order to collect DNA from Emily, now a 19-year-old woman. Serena didn't know if Emily knew anything about her origins, but given how the adoption file was recorded, missing birth hospital, missing relative papers, Serena suspected she'd grown up with an incomplete story. When the order was approved, Serena flew to North Carolina immediately, carrying copies of the 1999 file, genealogical DNA map, and Carla Jimenez DNA sample, the mother who held Lucia, just hours before she vanished. The meeting with the adoptive family happened in a setting where they had no idea Emily might connect to any disappearance. They were only told there was an issue verifying old adoption records. Serena chose to sit across from Emily in the soft living room light. The 19-year-old, tall and slim, bright brown eyes, cautious but not scared. Emily knew nothing about the mark behind her ear, nothing about the 2-year medical record gap, nothing about the woman who handed her over nearly 2 decades ago. "We just need to verify some health and family history info," Serena said, keeping her voice as steady as possible. Emily agreed, signed the test form without knowing that signature would change her entire life story, and a case thought long forgotten. The DNA sample went straight to Texas DPS crime lab, the one that separated 2 profiles from the pink blanket. Serena returned to Laredo and waited. What every investigator hates most. Every hour dragged like a thin thread about to snap. 6 days later, Serena got a lab email with one line, "Report ready." Her hand trembled slightly opening the PDF. The first page was familiar dry terms: Sample A, Sample B, Profile Match Percentage. Serena turned the page. The first line on page 2 made her steady her hand on the desk. DNA comparison, Carla Jimenez. Match probability, 99.99997%. Her eyes lingered on those words a long time. It needed no explanation, no hedging. It was the answer to 20 years of waiting. Emily Ortega was Lucia Jimenez, the baby abducted from Doctors Hospital of Laredo in May 1999. Serena read it again, then again. Every character, every number became alive in the silent room. 99.99997%. This wasn't coincidence, not distant genealogy. This was mother-child DNA. The bond time couldn't erase. Serena closed her eyes, and in that brief moment, she heard the faint echo of a 1999 night. Monitors, dim yellow lights, hurried footsteps, shaking hands dialing 911, and the pink blanket where it should never be. All of it, finally, led to a young woman named Emily, living thousands of miles from Laredo, and unaware of who she really was. The report had one more page. Serena turned and saw the final key line: secondary DNA comparison, unknown contributor, partial match to Ortega lineage, New Mexico. This didn't identify the second person, but confirmed the remaining blanket DNA, not mother or baby, belonged to the Ortega branch. Serena sat up straight. Her heart raced. One profile the child, one the mother, and the leftover DNA, unknown identity, but tied to Marisol Ortega's lineage. Everything started fitting into a structure no one saw for 20 years. Serena called Clarissa immediately. "DNA results are in," was all she said. Clarissa understood everything in the silence on the other end. The results didn't just confirm Emily was Lucia, they proved the night baby Lucia vanished. At least 2 people touched the pink blanket, one from the Ortega line, and that was no longer possibility. It was the start of a completely new and possibly final investigation direction. Serena stood, looking out her office window. Laredo's sky darkened, street lights flickered on, casting orange reflections on distant hospital windows. This night was different from 1999, because for the first time in 2 decades, the case was no longer about a vanished child. It became about a found child, and someone, with Ortega DNA traces, had to answer the question no one could for 20 years. Who took Lucia from the hospital? The biggest turning point in the case had happened, not from a statement, not from a blurry camera, not from a witness, but from DNA itself, the thing that never forgets. And it had just named the girl, Lucia Jimenez. Right after the DNA results confirmed Emily was Lucia, Serena Vega knew it was time to dig deep into Marisol Ortega. But to understand someone vanished for 2 decades, Serena couldn't rely on scattered addresses or old statements. She needed to reconstruct Marisol's path from Laredo 1999 to Winston-Salem 2000, a journey that, if true, had to match every leg, every time frame, every tiny trace. Serena started by rescanning purchase lists, archived records from medical supply stores around the Texas-New Mexico border in the late 90s. At a small El Paso shop, she found an undigitized paper receipt, a blue scrub, size S, paid cash, late April 1999. No buyer name, but the clerk's 20-year-old description: Hispanic woman, small build, low ponytail. Not enough to identify, but identical to the woman seen near maternity before the disappearance. Stranger, this scrub type wasn't used at Laredo Hospital, but matched the color the VHS camera captured as the blurry figure passed the hallway. Serena underlined the line in the file, red marker. After El Paso, Serena moved to Las Cruces, where the Ortega branch clustered most. Local church records showed a woman named Marisol in a volunteer group, 1998-1999. The group often traveled Las Cruces, El Paso, Laredo, supporting hospitals and religious facilities. No one remembered her face clearly, but one key detail: the group used an old silver van, New Mexico plates. When Serena compared to the 1999 Laredo Hospital parking lot tape, the car that appeared then vanished in black and white, matched the shape and length. No color, no plates, but vehicle match. Another fit. In Las Cruces, Serena found another record, a May 1999 shoe repair invoice at a small shop. It noted, replace women's sole small size, smooth nursemaid style. Smooth soles were the detail, 1999 investigators noted, because a small mud mark near the emergency exit didn't match hospital staff shoes. Reviewing the mud mark photo, Serena saw two things: 1, long and narrow; 2, nearly flat pattern, characteristic of cheap medical care shoes common in New Mexico. Then, no one working Laredo Hospital that night wore this type. But if the mystery woman was Marisol, and if she did semi-medical work, blue scrubs and nursemaid shoes were a common combo. El Paso fit, Las Cruces fit. Serena still needed the endpoint: Winston-Salem, where Emily Lucia was handed to adoptive parents in 2000. Contacting old Winston-Salem motel management, Serena found a tiny but key record, July 2000, a paperless woman listing first name. Marisol rented a room 10 days before leaving suddenly. The address given on the motel form was Anthony, New Mexico, exactly where some distant Ortega relatives lived. When Serena asked for 2000 motel camera footage, the owner said tapes were long destroyed. But an old employee's statement noted, she had an old silver van, looked like it had been on a long trip. Again, silver van. 3 matches, Laredo, Las Cruces, Winston-Salem, spanning nearly 2,000 miles. Serena redrew the timeline, leg by leg. May 10, 12 1999. Marisol at motel near Market Street, Laredo, May 14 1999. Baby Lucia vanishes. May 15 1999. Marisol checks out without notice. Late May 1999, strange woman appears in Las Cruces. June 1999. Nursemaid shoe repair invoice. July 2000, woman, using name Marisol, appears in Winston-Salem. August 2000, Emily Ortega handed to North Carolina adoptive parents. Every piece, from random to a continuous line, no breaks, no timeline conflicts. Marisol's journey matched the baby's disappearance then reappearance, terrifyingly. But matching wasn't proof of crime. Serena reminded herself that every night before leaving the office. No concluding without direct evidence, no going too far, but staring at the papers on the whiteboard, each piece seemed to turn itself to close the 20-year gap. Blue scrubs from El Paso, nursemaid shoes from Las Cruces, silver van in Laredo camera and Winston-Salem accounts, and finally the child with Carla Chimenez's DNA, appearing exactly where Marisol stopped. Serena knew the case had entered the final cold case phase, when pieces start revealing themselves. She only lacked one piece: was Marisol Ortega still alive, and if so, where? But right then, on Serena's databoard, the timeline was complete in a way no 1999 investigator could imagine. Ortega was no longer a vague name. She had become a movement, clear, continuous, leading straight from Laredo maternity to North Carolina. And if this timeline was right, it would open the door no one could push for 20 years. Who really took Lucia, and why? Having fully matched Marisol Ortega's entire path from Laredo to Winston-Salem, Serena Vega still felt something off in the picture. Not the timeline, not the DNA, but how everything happened so fast that night. A lone woman couldn't walk hospital hallways, carry a baby, bypass cameras, emergency exit, parking lot, and leave before lockdown. Especially the camera glitch, right when the figure appeared, a mystery unsolved in 1999. Serena realized Marisol couldn't do it alone. So who else? The question became urgent as new Texas DPS lab data returned. A technician found the second blanket DNA, the Ortega branch one, but mixed with traces of a machine oil no one analyzed in 1999. This oil commonly stuck to hands of those working with mechanical or electrical equipment. The small note made Serena recall what bothered her. The 1999 hospital camera glitched exactly at the critical moment. Who worked on cameras then? Serena requested Laredo Hospital security maintenance logs, 1998, 2000. The thick, messy file had one note that stopped her. Technician on call RM. Special access clearance, revised 04-1999. A technician called multiple times in April and May 1999 to check hallway cameras 3 and 4. Hallway 4 was the one capturing the blurry blue scrub figure, RM. 2 initials, not full name. Serena immediately pulled old employment records. RM was Ricardo Mendez, contract camera technician, part-time for the hospital 1998-1999. Not staff, no uniform, no full HR file, just short-term contracts with a San Antonio tech service company. Serena checked Mendez's hospital work dates, last appearance, May 12, 1999. 2 days before Lucia vanished. The next day, 0513, the camera system was log tested stable, though no one signed off except him. 0514, main hallway camera 4, glitched. 0515, Mendez didn't return for the next shift, and after that, he vanished from all Texas labor records. No resignation, no company transfer, no tax filings, no license renewal, no housing registration. Vanished. Like Marisol, Serena circled Ricardo Mendez in red on the file board. Now she had 2 parallel tracks: Marisol, the one moving the baby out of Laredo, and Mendez, the one who may have cleared the path by disabling the camera. But Serena didn't want conclusions without evidence. She needed something tying the two together, and that clue came from a source almost no one expected: an old flip phone. When Serena reclaimed the bag of items deemed irrelevant in 1999, she saw a note: recovered item, not relevant, trash from staff room, old phone battery, pen cap, scrap note. The 1999 flip phone battery was considered trash, not evidence, but Serena took it to the lab. Forensic techs used serial number analysis and old carrier identification. After 2 days they matched the battery model and the device ID that used it. Serena requested old cell tower connection history from the carrier, a complex process for 20-plus year data, but with a federal order, the carrier provided extracts of the device's final network pings. 3 lines froze Serena. May 14, 1999. 2:58 a.m. Device connected to tower near Doctors Hospital of Laredo. 2:59 a.m. Device received text from a number registered in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Message content: ready yet. Serena's throat went dry. This message sent minutes before Carla woke and found Lucia gone. A message from New Mexico to a phone just rooms from the maternity ward. Serena rechecked Las Cruces registered numbers from that year. The result made the ground tilt. The sending number was a prepaid account in the name Marisol Ortega. Full name appearing for the first time in 20 years, not in admin records, but in a cell log, nearly tossed in the trash. Serena stood before the info board, placing the 2 names side by side: Marisol Ortega, the one moving the baby; Ricardo Mendez, the one adjusting cameras right before the disappearance. The message ready yet, like a thread connecting them, long, thin, but crystal clear. The question now wasn't, was Marisol alone? But what was Ricardo Mendez's role, and why did he vanish right after the case? Serena knew she'd touched the most dangerous layer of the case, the shell no one peeled in 20 years, at least 2 people involved in getting Lucia out of the hospital, and of the 2, only one could still be traced. Marisol left the baby. Mendez left the camera gap, but for the first time, Serena saw the shape of a network, not individual action. A small, quiet, but highly sophisticated network, and it started with one question hanging in the air. If Marisol carried the baby, who opened the door for her? After the ready yet message clue surfaced, Serena Vega understood she wasn't just tracing Marisol and Ricardo Mendez, but had to return to the starting point, Doctors' Hospital of Laredo that night. All 1999 statements were taken in chaos, when the hospital drowned in fear, and police didn't yet know what was happening. Serena realized if there was an accomplice, and if the camera was intentionally glitched, someone must have seen something, but stayed silent. She started calling every nurse, janitor, tech still alive or in Texas for interviews. Some were shocked the case reopened after 20 years, others avoided because they didn't want to remember, but most cooperated when Serena explained the new DNA progress. However, as statements repeated 1999 records, Serena felt like walking in circles, until one person appeared, a janitor named Lupe Martinez, who was on the nursery floor the night Lucia vanished. Lupe, now nearly 60, living in Laredo suburbs, different job, but when she heard Serena wanted to ask about that night shift, she went silent so long. Serena thought she'd refuse, but finally, Lupe agreed to come to Laredo PD. Sitting in the interview room, her hands trembled slightly, holding the paper cup. Lupe repeated exactly what she stated in 1999, that she passed the hallway twice, wiped the meeting room floor, then returned to the break room. But when Serena asked if she ever saw anyone strange in the hallway, Lupe looked down at the table. For the first time in 20 years, she said what the old file never recorded. Yes, I saw someone, but I didn't dare say. The room went completely silent. Serena leaned forward. Why didn't you dare say? Lupe bit her lip, then said softly, because I was threatened. Serena didn't breathe for seconds. Lupe continued, voice low as if someone was still listening. She saw a man standing near the nursery hallway around nearly 3 a.m. Oh, dark t-shirt, not hospital uniform. She just glanced, but the man looked straight at her, eyes not like someone looking for a person or lost in the wrong area. When she started to turn back and ask, the man said in a low but clear voice, don't go this way, go somewhere else. Not your business. Lupe felt chills then, but still took a few steps forward. The man approached, placed a hand on the wall near her, and added a sentence that froze her. Go back to the break room. This isn't your business. You don't want trouble. She left, didn't dare return. The next morning when police arrived, she was too scared to tell, scared of being seen as a troublemaker, scared of blame, scared of being dragged in, and for years, she convinced herself what she saw was unrelated. But in Serena's interview room, with DNA confirming Lucia alive, with the Ortega network emerging, Lupe knew she couldn't stay silent. Serena asked if she could describe the man's face. Lupe said unclear, only remembered something on his face, left side, running up to the cheek. Serena sat motionless, the scar, the camera reflection, the figure in the blur. Serena didn't voice the thought, just noted, and asked more. Do you think he was hospital staff? Lupe shook her head hard. No, I knew every face on night shift. He wasn't one of them. This statement, though no name connected two key fragments, Marisol Ortega wasn't acting alone. A man stood in the hallway, at the exact time matching the camera glitch, and that man could be Ricardo Mendez, the camera tech, who vanished right after the case, with a scar matching the faint 1999 tape reflection. Serena immediately rebuilt the 3 o'clock, 4 a.m. timeline. This time not on chaotic 1999 statements, but new data. 3 o'clock, Carla wakes, checks on baby. 3:02, Lupe passes hallway. 3:03, Lupe blocked by man, warned not to proceed. 3:05, Camera 4 starts glitching. 3:06. Blue scrub figure appears in frame. 3:07. 3:10. No one in nursery confirms moving infant. 3:11. Mendez's device receives ready yet text from New Mexico. 3:12. 3:15. Camera dead zone, no movement recorded. 3:16. Figure vanishes from frame. 3:17. Mud mark appears near emergency exit. 3:20. 3:30. Silver van in parking lot shadowed corner. 3:30. 4. Nurse finds empty crib. 3:50. Hospital calls 911, locks down exits. This timeline, for the first time in 20 years, had no illogical gaps. Lupe threatened exactly when the man guarded the hallway. Ready yet, text at the exact moment camera glitched. Figure in camera appeared and vanished in the dead zone. Mendez checked beforehand, and Marisol could enter the hallway, as the emergency exit was just opened. Serena looked at the new timeline, a sharp sequence like clockwork, and understood the case was no longer scattered mystery. It was a staged script. A woman carrying baby Lucia away, a man facilitating glitching camera, blocking witness, opening emergency exit. 2 people, 2 roles, 1 plan. And that night, they coordinated to the minute, but the biggest question remained unanswered. Why did they do it? Serena knew the answer lay just behind the remaining file layer, the final one of the case. With the 3:04 a.m. timeline rebuilt by Serena Vega, with unprecedented precision, her next step was gathering every evidence fragment over 2+ decades: the blanket, red stain, mud mark, camera glitch, text message, blue scrubs, nursemaid shoes, and tying them into one forensic logic chain. This wasn't the emotional part, but the coldest of investigation, turning vague memories into evidence, statements into movement paths, and scattered details into a real sequence of what happened at Doctors Hospital of Laredo on the night of May 14, 1999. Serena started with the only point all witnesses matched. Lucia was still in the nursery crib before around 3 a.m. From there, everything had to match forensically. She used a large whiteboard, drawing 4 main hallways, 3 cameras, emergency exit, and parking lot. Then, each evidence piece placed in that space. 1. Pink blanket. 2019 forensics showed the blanket had at least 2 DNA sources, 1 baby Lucia's, 1 genealogically tied to the Ortega branch. Blanket found position, hallway corner near emergency exit, confirmed it fell or was dropped during rushed movement. Investigation extrapolated from drop position. Baby carrier used left arm to hold infant, other hand held blanket, and due to fast movement, blanket edge slipped. 2. Tiny red stain, blood or fluid. New forensic analysis showed the red stain insufficient for full sample, but structure consistent with scrape or rub when newborn pressed against adult arm. No signs of serious infant injury, meaning stain likely from friction, as carrier dropped or pulled blanket while running. Pull direction matched emergency exit path to backyard. 3. Small mud mark near emergency exit. Serena had forensics reanalyze the mud mark, preserved via photo and original sample in storage. Though no longer enough for soil DNA, shape still clear, long, narrow, nearly patternless. Forensics confirmed not hospital staff shoe, nearly perfect match to nursemaid sole, type repaired in Las Cruces, at the same time Marisol Ortega was recorded. More importantly, mud mark pressure point indicated wearer twisting left and stepping fast toward emergency exit, not reverse. 4. Blue scrubs and metal reflection in camera. Blue scrubs appeared as blur in VHS camera, and after digitization, forensics clearly identified curved metal reflection, like medical cart edge. This suggested baby carrier partially shielded body with cart or pushed one alongside to obscure movement path. Forensics reconstructed path from nursery to emergency exit, concluding if person hugged wall, lightly pushed cart, camera would capture only shadow, not face, matching what Serena saw in the tape. 5. Camera glitch signal analysis showed glitch not natural system failure. 4. 5-second glitch had wave pulse structure like handheld jammer at close range. This terrifyingly matched Ricardo Mendez checked camera 4 one day before the case, and had expertise to use simple device to glitch for seconds, just enough for the figure to pass. 6. Ready yet. Text arrived, 2:59 a.m. from prepaid Las Cruces registered phone in Marisol Ortega's name. Forensic old signal strength analysis showed receiving device inside the hospital, not parking lot, meaning one person, likely Mendez, stood in hallway or technical area when Marisol sent the text from New Mexico or near border. This reinforced theory. Marisol didn't enter hospital alone, she had inside support. 7. Hallway movement forensics rebuilt automatic light on-off times based on 1999 motion sensors. Sensors only triggered hallway lights on detected movement. Archived data showed emergency exit near hallway light on 3:11, 3:12, exactly during camera glitch, meaning someone stood in sensor range as camera figure left frame. Investigation compared positions and hallway speed, concluding, movement from nursery to camera capture point took about 8-10 seconds, from there to emergency exit, another 6-8 seconds. Entire process could occur in just 20 seconds, perfectly matching camera glitch window. 8. Silver van forensics reviewed wind speed and surface temperature data from that night NOAA archived. When Serena cross-referenced with digitized parking lot camera, forensics noted, silver van ground shadow changed only in final 1-2 minutes, meaning van started engine and prepared to leave lot, not parked long. This matched 3:20, 3:30 a.m. van shadow appears. 3:34 a.m., nurse finds empty crib, if baby carrier left hospital 3:15, 3:17, time to van and lot exit was fully feasible. Asterisk, 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 when Serena completed this forensic event chain, she looked up at the full board. Each point, blanket, mud scrubs, camera text, no longer isolated fragments. They interlocked perfectly like turning gears. No more doubt in the vague sense. No more coincidence in the random sense. The journey taking Lucia from the hospital had been forensically reconstructed, step by step, second by second. The only thing left, Serena thought, was finding where Marisol Ortega had hidden for 20 years and how Ricardo Mendez vanished. And that answer would lead straight to the next part of the investigation. With the forensic event chain nearly complete, Serena Vega understood time to keep tracing backward in the dark was over. Ortega was no longer a faint name in motel records or strange genetic trace. She was the central piece of a case spanning over 2 decades, and evidence was clear enough that legally, it couldn't be delayed further. Serena sent the full forensic report, 3:04 a.m., timeline DNA data, and genealogical connections to the federal prosecutor's office. Arrest warrant signed just 48 hours later. U.S. Marshals Carolina Task Force took the assignment. They knew little about Ortega, only a sparse description, female around 38, high evasion capability, unclear occupation, lived many unregistered places. But what made them cautious was Serena's note, possible past accomplice, but no current signs. Subject tends to flee rather than fight. Data from an odd 2018 tax report led them to a forested area outside Greensboro, North Carolina, where Ortega appeared in a small cabin rental record, under a woman using temporary ID. Cabin described as isolated, no neighbors within 300 yards, exactly the kind of place someone avoiding the past chooses. Tuesday dawn, the humid southeast U.S. forest air clung to Marshall's bulletproof vests. 6 split into 2 teams, moving silently through dry leaf-covered paths. The cabin appeared small and dark among tree shadows, only faint yellow light leaking from a door crack, signed someone inside. Team leader signaled stop about 15 feet from the door. They listened. No TV, no radio, just an old fan whirring lightly inside. One marshal approached the side window, peered through curtain gap. He turned back whispering, alone. At 5:13 a.m., leader raised hand, signaled start. The strong door knock and shout, U.S. Marshals, open the door now, shattered the forest silence. No running sounds, no falling objects, no lock turning, just a breathless moment of silence. Then slow, light footsteps toward the door. When the door cracked open, Ortega appeared, thinner than file photos, long loose hair, expressionless face. She looked around at the marshal's team before the cabin, guns lowered per protocol. None knew how she'd react, but Ortega just exhaled long, as if she'd waited for this moment forever. "I won't resist," she said, voice strangely calm, hands raised forward, not trembling, cuffs locked on. No screaming, no tears, no pleading, no denial, just quiet surrender, almost acceptance. As marshals led her from the cabin, flashlight beams swept a small wooden table inside. Serena, watching via command vehicle video feed, saw an item that chilled her spine, an old pair of smooth-sole nursemaid shoes, placed neatly beside a faded blue scrub set. Ortega hadn't tried to hide, hadn't burned, hadn't discarded, hadn't fled. She seemed to just live beside them, as if unable to separate from what bound her, that fateful night. As Ortega stepped down the cabin stairs, sky began to lighten. Morning mist clung to her cuffed wrists. No one knew what she was thinking. But as a marshal gently guided her head into the vehicle, Ortega softly said one sentence, not to them, but like to herself: "I knew this day would come." That wasn't a confession, nor an explanation, just the truth that 20 years of running had ended. As the vehicle took Ortega from the forest, Serena felt one part of the case just slotted into place, but also knew clearly another part remained full of shadows. Ricardo Mendez, the man with the scar, who glitched the camera and blocked the witness. Ortega was caught, but Mendez's shadow lingered, persistent, silent, unnamed. And Serena understood, catching Ortega was just the start. The case's final truth still waited ahead. The federal trial in the Western District of North Carolina wasn't like a regular hearing. It was the end of a journey longer than 2 decades, and everyone entering the courtroom that day knew this case wasn't just about one defendant, but about security gaps, silence, and the mistakes of 1999. Marisol Ortega appeared in the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hand steady, sun-tanned face, still calm, like when U.S. Marshals cuffed her at the cabin. She was charged with 3 federal counts: kidnapping of a minor, abducting a child under 1 year old, tampering with a medical facility, unlawful interference in a healthcare area, and forgery fraud regarding identity transfer, falsifying and using documents when handing the child over in private adoption. The federal prosecutor opened by presenting the forensic timeline, the sequence Serena Vega rebuilt and rated as rare accuracy in a case 20 years old. They projected the Doctors' Hospital of Laredo layout on screen: nursery position, hallway 4, emergency exit, parking lot. Then each piece of evidence: first the pink blanket, still bearing baby Lucia's DNA, and the Ortega branch sample. A forensic expert explained how they separated 2 profiles, proving the blanket holder not only carried the baby, but held her close to the chest, matching the movement direction toward the emergency exit. Next, the mud mark with nursemaid's sole shape, cross-referenced with the shoes found in Ortega's cabin. The prosecutor didn't say those shoes were the ones worn the night of the disappearance, but said they matched the type causing the mud mark, and residual soil on the shoes was compatible with the composition of dirt behind Laredo Hospital. Then the faded blue scrubs photo: a 1999 nurse, now retired, testified that the scrub color Ortega owned was identical tone to the scrubs the camera figure at 306 wore. Not absolute, but combined with the timeline, it became a key piece. But the strongest evidence, the prosecutor said, lay in the DNA. The report presented to the court: 99.99997% match between Emily Ortega and Carla Jimenez. The entire courtroom fell dead silent as the DNA expert explained. No 2 unrelated people could achieve this match rate. That was the legal affirmation Emily was Lucia, the baby taken from the hospital 20 years earlier. Alongside, the ready yet text analysis was presented by a tech specialist, as the piece confirming Ortega didn't act alone. Prosecution didn't charge anyone else in this trial, but proved the text arrived exactly when the camera glitched, and the receiving device belonged to someone inside the hospital. That data clarified the organized element, turning the abduction into accomplice action, even if the accomplice wasn't prosecuted. Then the evidence Serena saw via cabin video: the nursemaid shoes and blue scrub set, Prosecution argued no one keeps those items for 2 decades, unless they hold special meaning. Meanwhile, defense tried to counter DNA didn't prove Ortega used violence. The blanket could have passed through many hands. Cabin shoes were just old stuff, and her presence in Laredo 1999 didn't equal abducting a child, but prosecution was ready. They called Lupe Martinez to the stand, the last to admit she was threatened in the hallway near 3 a.m. She recounted in a low voice, "I saw a man blocking the way, and he wouldn't let me pass." Prosecution asked, "Looking at the defendant in this courtroom, do you see similarity to the woman passing the hallway that night?" Lupe didn't confirm, but said, "I see similar build, but I remember the shoes. Smooth soles, and blue. Not strong, but enough to tie the point." The trial lasted many days. Prosecution used forensics to recreate the night of May 14, 1999. Defense tried to break each detail, but what Serena noticed most was Ortega's reaction. No crying, no resistance, no objection, no face change when DNA was presented. She just sat silent, hands clasped on the table, as if what was happening was no longer a fight, but a long-arranged setup. The court ended the evidence day with a prosecutor's statement, "None of us can go back to 1999 to see what happened. But forensics, DNA, and suspect movements have told the story time once hid." When the judge gavels the session closed, the room sank into the heavy air of a truth about to emerge, and Serena knew the next step would be when the Laredo community faced what they'd waited 20 years for. The federal trial closed, but the case's aftershocks didn't stop in the courtroom. They spread along the Texas border, through medical communities, hospital security forces, and federal agencies. Laredo, where Lucia's disappearance was once seen as a silent wound for over 2 decades, now had to face the truth that the baby wasn't just carried from a lit room, but taken through security layers the hospital once believed impenetrable. After the DNA verdict and detailed forensic description were released, the Texas Medical Association immediately convened an emergency meeting. In just 3 months, every hospital in the state, from big cities to small towns, was required to upgrade Code Pink protocols, newborn abduction alert to federal level, ankle tracking chips on infants, emergency exits auto-locking on Code Pink activation, anti-jamming cameras, and automatic alerts when any staff moves a child from nursery without auth code. No hospital in Texas will relive the night of May 14, 1999, the state health department rep declared. Laredo PD, long viewing this as an unsolvable case, became a regular FBI stop. Quantico missing child investigators came to Texas to interview Serena Vega, review her full forensic chain, and evaluate the 2-decade investigation process. To them, this wasn't just a cold case, it was a complete training model for rare but extremely dangerous newborn abductions. In new training materials, the Lucia Jimenez case was listed under case study priority: how suspects used fake scrubs, how they interfered with cameras, how they appeared as volunteers, how they exploited unmonitored parking areas, and how they moved a child thousands of miles without medical records. FBI called it the Laredo method, not to honor, but to warn. Without digitized forensics, genealogical DNA, and one investigator's persistence, the method might never have been uncovered. In the Laredo community, reactions mixed horror, relief, and skepticism. Many who worked at the hospital in 1999 felt guilt, thinking they lacked vigilance. Others felt anger that an out-of-state woman could enter maternity without questions. Many mothers bringing children to the hospital in 2020 admitted they only felt safe seeing the new electronic wristband system deployed. But the biggest aftershock wasn't in the hospital, it was in the RM file. When the trial ended, federal prosecution clearly stated, the Ricardo Mendez investigation remains open, and FBI with U.S. Marshals continue tracing. No death record, no immigration record, no work record, like he vanished in 1999 without footprints. Many thought he crossed to Mexico, some speculated identity change. Rumors said he was no longer alive, but FBI confirmed no theory. In the end-of-year federal report, his line was bolded: RM remains an unidentified secondary suspect. Investigation ongoing. Meaning the case, even with Lucia found and Ortega caught, wasn't fully closed. And in official FBI files, there was a separate entry called the Mendez Gap. The 25 minutes forensics believe Mendez stood in the hospital hallway, controlling the camera, opening the door, blocking the witness, but no confirming image. A gap the law couldn't yet fill. For Serena Vega, this wasn't failure. She knew many cases take years more to track accomplices, and returning Lucia to her true identity was the victory Laredo waited 2 decades for. But in quiet nights at Laredo PD office, staring at the wall timeline board, she still kept an empty box next to Ricardo Mendez. Not for obsession, but to remind that justice sometimes comes in parts. That night in the hospital, 2 people took Lucia from her world. 2 pieces were seen, but only one brought to light. The case closed for the Texas community, for FBI, for Laredo Hospital. But in the federal investigation system, the final line remained open. Case resolved, but not complete. Looking back at Lucia Emily's story, we don't just see a criminal case, but a mirror reflecting U.S. life today, where modern tech, advanced healthcare, and complex legal machinery still have very human gaps. A newborn vanishing from Doctors Hospital of Laredo, in minutes, under maternity's yellow lights, among security cameras and paperwork, reminds us that the feeling of default safety is sometimes the most dangerous. A nurse seeing a misplaced blanket, but not reporting immediately. Witness Lupe blocked by a scarred man in the hallway at 3 a.m. and silent for 20 years out of fear. The Winston-Salem family, taking a girl named Emily from a friend of a friend, without asking enough about birth papers, all small choices that together prolonged the justice journey. Conversely, other small choices saved everything. The 2010 tech, carefully digitizing old VHS tape, scientists not giving up separating DNA from a tiny red spot on the pink blanket, Detective Serena Vega persistently digging old Laredo motel records, and cross-checking with the Ortega genealogical DNA group, FBI turning the Laredo method into a nationwide newborn abduction training case study. The lesson for us, living in today's U.S. society, is to be more proactive protecting children and communities. Parents need to understand why hospitals require code pink bands. Why not to let strangers hold babies even in scrubs? Medical and security staff must be encouraged to report anything off, instead of fearing hassle. Citizens should respect forensics, DNA, and cold case units, supporting budgets for groups quietly righting past wrongs. And finally, Lucia's story reminds us that justice in America can come very late, but it needs courage to speak truth, investigator persistence, and individual vigilance, from a small Texas hospital hallway to a silent North Carolina forest cabin. If you want to keep following determined case-breaking journeys like Lucia Jimenez, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any story. Thank you for joining. See you in the next video, where we continue exploring cases thought lost to oblivion, but ultimately brought to light.